Good morning, good afternoon. I think we're literally in the middle ground. So I'm Nick. I'm the founder of a company called People.io. My background most recently was working in WPP on some of their biggest accounts and becoming increasingly fascinated by how tens, hundreds of millions of dollars are being used to just disrupt lives. It's called advertising. And from that became increasingly interested in the idea of the attention economy. And if you think about gold, it's a great simple version to use. There's less gold available, the price goes up. There's more gold available, price goes down. People's attention is just like gold. As there's less attention available, the price will go up. And what we're starting to see is this massive growth of ad blocking, which we've talked a lot about, but also the increased EU data privacy regulation, GDPR. And that's just one part of the privacy side. But what that will start to do is create this scarcity of attention and scarcity of data. In France, they just announced, I think, 52% of millennials block ads. The same as in the UK. Last year, year on year, the UK saw the largest growth, 80% growth. 9 months ago, when we started the company, the people that we spoke to said, ad blocking, not an issue, not a problem. And of course, now we all know it is. And the reason we know it is because it's costing people money. A lawyer that I used to work with told me, always follow the money, and you'll find a problem or an opportunity, and often they're interchangeable. And when you follow the money, it actually comes down to publishers. Advertisers right now aren't the ones being hit the hardest. It's the publishers that make their revenues from the advertising. And what's even more interesting about this is in an Adobe PageFair report last year, they pointed out that one of the biggest drivers for the adoption of ad blocking is the misuse of personal data. I normally have a photo of a publisher website in there that I've chosen to mask, but they publish lots of articles about the Kardashians. And they have 84 different pieces of tracking technology going on in the background. So when you're there reading an article on this news website, and by the way, very few publishers are any different, when you load up and you find all of this tracking going on in the background, you get scared and you get concerned. And so Europe is now starting to institute these new regulations. They were provisionally signed off earlier this year, and they'll go through the Commission in spring. But effectively, it will give consumers far more control over how their data is collected and then used in order to market to them, and rightly so. And what scares me at the moment, as an industry person, is the industry's approach to this is to find a solution for the industry and not for the consumer. This was the solution the IAB presented a few months ago. Detect ad blocking, explain to the consumer why you should then re-enable ad blocking, go through the hassle of whitelisting that website, and then if they won't do that, just block their access. Great, sure, good idea for the industry, but if the consumer's not going to do that, you fail. And what you've got to think about, Microsoft last year found out that humans now have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. So if you're going to try and take a consumer that's trying to get to your website to read 2 paragraphs of an article, are they going to bother? No. When I was looking for an article or some images about tab browsing, I realized that my own browser had 20-odd tabs open where I'm flicking between them. If I go to an article and it's not available, I leave the site. So our solution to all of this, create a platform where people are able to license their data and their attention to brands or other companies in return for payment or reward. License is the operative word. You don't sell data. If you've sold data, you've lost control of it. If you license it, you retain control and you can create value. It follows a wider industry trend around the ownership of assets. Some of the largest, most successful companies that you see these days don't own the assets they create value from. Uber doesn't own the cars. Airbnb don't own the houses. So why, and this is probably a slightly provocative question, why should you own a person's data? Why should you, as a DMP, have control of a person's data? So the analogy that I use to explain this is a friend of mine that I used to work with really loved shoes. We used to travel around together to different meetings in different places. And every now and again, she would run up behind someone and take a photo of their shoes. She would come back and I'd say, what on earth are you doing? That's very weird. And her explanation was she really liked them. And by taking a photo of them, she could go back to the office, speak to her friends, find out what brand they are, where she can buy them from, how much they cost, etc. Now, it's not illegal to do that, but if that person turned around and saw her do it, they'd freak out and say, what on earth are you doing? That's weird. Well, that's kind of what the industry does right now. They're sneaking up behind people, they're taking a photo of them, they're going off to their friends and saying, hey, who do you think this person is? Do you think they like this? Do you think they're interested in that? And then they bombard them with advertising. Surely the simple solution would to walk up to that person and say, hey, nice shoes, where'd you get them from? The person feels in control. The information you'll get will be a lot more accurate and a lot quicker. Sure, if you start to ask more invasive questions, you might need to give them something in return. But the point is that both sides have control over the conversation. And that's exactly what we do. So we've built a platform where people have that control. So the second you put any information in, you get paid for it. We point out right from the very start that you also own the data. So if you were to ever delete your account, all the data gets deleted. The data never leaves the platform, so any of the partners never actually get access to the data, which enables us to license it. As you go through the registration, you answer questions. Every time you answer a question, you get paid for it. And of course, like every good new app, we have a Tinder-style interface in it that allows you to swipe questions. When you get to the dashboard, you're also able to connect different data sources. So some of you will be familiar that in the UK, Bank of England's regulating that UK banks have to start creating APIs for their consumers. So very quickly, consumers are going to become very familiar with the idea of using their transactional finance data in third-party platforms. So if you start to integrate these different types of services, moving beyond social media, where it takes an awful lot of effort to get any true insight from it, if you go to the high-value data sources, you build inference models. Again, you pay the user every time they validate a piece of information. You can start to do some pretty interesting things. So this is just one example where imagine this person walking down Oxford Street. So you know their age, you know how much they earn to an accurate level because you have that transaction data. You know how much disposable income they have. You know that they're going on holiday next week because you saw an email from Expedia and they validated it with one of the questions. And you know the brands they normally shop at. So for H&M that's 100 meters around the corner, that person is suddenly a very high value in-market conquest opportunity. Someone that if they were able to walk up to them on the street, they'd probably pay a fair amount more than a banner impressions value in order to talk to them. So through the platform, they're able to engage them. If the user decides to consume the content, they get paid for it. And then you see the coupon or the voucher. So that's really important because it enables attribution. So right now, the value of advertising is lower than it probably could be because attribution is very hard to do across channels. Here, because the user's got control, suddenly you can attribute physical retail because you can scan the coupon, prove the conversion. You're able to use iBeacons, Wi-Fi analytics, bank transactions and the value of it, e-receipts, location from the device. All of these things are possible now because the user has the control over what data they're sharing. The florist example I'll come to later. There's a full transaction history, so every time a transaction is made, the user's able to see it. They're able to see the brand that it was from, where it was used, when it was used, and the value associated to it. What we're working to at the moment is an assumption model where we create around £14 of value per user per month for one advert per day. And that's based on a number of industry benchmarks with intent-driven user engagement. But what's important to note about that is whilst you're able to then go into the marketplace and redeem those credits for physical things, at the moment, gift cards across a number of brands to help us understand it, that credit can also be used in other ways. So we're working with a couple of publishers right now to explore how the value that's created from that environment can actually close the loop and then be used to buy content online. Because the research that we've done, 18 to 25-year-olds, huge adoption of ad blocking, they're very mercenary. You have to tell them, I will pay you this in return for that. 25 to 35, still high use of ad blocking. Far less about the monetary value, more about how you can reduce the outgoings from their disposable income. So right now, where you've got a lot of publishers starting to ask for $1, there's a lot of hassle overhead of putting your credit card details in and spend $1 a week on content. If you can simply just take some credits out of here that you've accrued through engaging with something else earlier, that's a great solution. And then we have a B2B platform, which I don't really have time to go into, but effectively imagine that as a brand, you're able to create a campaign that's not only based on a budget of advertising, but on data as well. So you can buy new data and create new data. We launched in the UK, a lot of consumer press, and what's interesting is the brands that we're talking to, yes, some sit in advertising, but we actually have investment from insurance, telecoms, finance, mostly everything except advertising, because all of these industries are starting to realize the value of their data. And I'll leave you with a final question to put this in context. we're all talking about different formats of advertising right now, different types of banners, different types of media units you can put on a website. How do you advertise to a fridge? So in 2 years' time, or maybe sooner, maybe a little after, when your smart home fridge is the one that's ordering your food for you, and the quality of a fridge is determined by the algorithm that orders the food, not how cold it keeps the food, where does that data come from? Where, right now, you can't plug in Facebook, you can't plug in a DMP and send an audience profile of food to that person's fridge. The data needs to come from somewhere. And then when there's a premium decision over a logical decision that the fridge has made, how do you rely on a person's emotion in order to convince them to override the fridge? You need their attention. And the attention isn't going to come from a banner unit or from a piece of content. You have to have that direct engagement with the user. So the face of advertising will fundamentally change. And so it's really important as an industry, we have to focus on the consumer. We've got to stop thinking about the future of the past and actually link beyond it into the future of the consumer. Thank you very much.